Can the sentiment for these altcoins actually turn around? By now, so many people are sitting at a loss. Will that ever really change? That's a question I've been asked in the past few days, and I thought, come on, this definitely needs to be addressed here. We'll also talk a bit about the inflation numbers that came out these days, but these are definitely very important topics that we need to cover here. And before we dive right in, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and a comment. It's a lot of work, so support the whole thing, friends. Basically, we're still relatively well positioned with the altcoin. We haven't broken through certain zones here. For example, if we had broken through our yellow line here, it would definitely not be unlikely that we would then fall towards $40,000 to $50,000 per altcoin. I mean, that was also the case in past cycles. If we break the support here, it can quickly become very deep. Back then, we fell from nearly $40,000 to $15,000 with the altcoin. It's good that we have held our zone here and haven't broken through it sustainably so far. This is a very, very important resistance zone. We really need to keep an eye on it in the coming days. Here we have the total trade chart. This is the altcoins chart. This is the monthly view. So each candle here represents a month. And this here is the bull run of 2021. Here is 2017. And now we need to pay special attention to a few things here. Let's take a look at the US dollar. Here we can see very clearly there is a huge difference. Whether a Democrat comes to power, like Obama, or whether a Republican comes to power, because when Trump was elected president back then, the dollar was weakened. With the Democrats, it looks completely different. It looks like they first start to really strengthen the dollar. And this pattern was the same in the last 4 US elections. That's why it's the same this time again, and we can see that very clearly. We see a weaker dollar. The correlation between Democrats and Republicans is enormous. We are essentially following the same pattern as in the past. And that's why we need to, in the total 3 chart, we shouldn't look at the last cycle. We especially need to look at the 2017 cycle, exactly where we once had Donald Trump as president, where, from a macroeconomic and global economic perspective, we were in a similar situation from 2017 to 2021. We saw it with the altcoins. It first became interesting when we broke through the total 3 market cap from the previous bull run, when we did that here. In the last cycle, a significant amount came in again. Capital flowed in, and we gained over 230% just in the altcoin market cap. Believe me, that's enormous for altcoins. We're talking about multi-billion amounts that flowed in back then. And in 2021, we really had a massive altcoin season. So far in this cycle, we haven't managed to break through the total market cap of 2021. That's very bad, and it definitely shows with the altcoins. However, it becomes interesting when we look at time and data. According to time and data, we had tough stagnation phases in every cycle here, especially with the altcoins. One naturally wonders, can this even change? In 2017, we had a huge altcoin bull run. However, the altcoin bull run actually only started towards the end of the year. From August to January, so about 4 or 5 months. During this time, the altcoin market cap increased 30-fold. And the altcoins went through the roof. And that's why I'm not worried at all that we won't have any money left for the altcoins or anything like that. Or that maybe no one is interested in altcoins anymore. This sentiment was similar in the past. It only needs to go well for 2 to 3 weeks, and then the sentiment can quickly turn around. I took a very close look at the 2017 bull run, and we can see that we also had a stagnation phase in March and a 35% correction. Then again in June, nearly a 40% correction, and once more in September, almost a 40% correction. These were completely normal correction waves. However, back then we rose steadily, step by step. This time, we've already risen too sharply with altcoins, but these corrections and stagnation phases are actually quite similar to the past. We had these 30-40% phases every time. That is completely part of it. The big problem we currently have, however, is that we simply do not yet have any monetary expansion. In the USA, we have seen a strict monetary policy in the balance sheet all the time. Money has been taken out of the markets all the time here. We need a loose monetary policy, that is, a monetary expansion, so that the Bitcoin dominance can fall here at all. When the Bitcoin dominance falls, altcoins go up. Here is another graphic. Here we simply see this correlation between loose monetary policy, global liquidity, and the altcoin sector. The altcoin sector can only perform if we have a global monetary expansion and a loose monetary policy in the USA. These are the 2 most important factors for the altcoins. The rest is almost completely irrelevant. In terms of global liquidity, we now have new surpluses, and we have seen over the past weeks that it is increasing massively. That is already very, very positive, but it is not enough for us. We also need the USA on our side here again. For them to implement a loose monetary policy again, That would be extremely important. And accordingly, everyone is looking at the US economy, which is completely understandable. And we saw yesterday that inflation has fallen to 2.4. This is extremely important because the Fed has announced that if we have 2% inflation, then monetary expansion will begin. So that is already extremely important. Now everything really depends on the next inflation figures, because with the next inflation figures, it is unfortunately expected that we will see an inflation rate of 2.7%, and that is not good at all. That would of course be an increase again, and with that we would probably go directly into a recession. What I think at this point is that we are simply seeing that this fear of recession is being deliberately created. We are now supposed to think that inflation is somehow rising again. We are supposed to assume a recession. And then usually everything turns out better. Because actually these inflation figures should be considered very good. But a decline in inflation can also indicate that people are buying less. And that's why one should be a bit cautious here again. But that's also the reason why we are so fearful, why currently no one is investing. In the USA, we have too many difficulties and no one really knows what's going on here. Whether it's bullish or bearish now. And that just needs to be decided now. The thing with the recession is everyone is talking about it. Everyone is afraid of it. Once you even mention that dreaded R word, everyone starts sweating immediately. But let's just take a look at the economy or the recession in 2020 during Corona. We had a crash with altcoins here, yes. The crash was significant, but it only lasted 3 weeks. And with this major crash, it was like this. It was a recession, and politics had to intervene. How did politics have to intervene? In the form of monetary expansion. Take a look at that. When Corona came, look at the jump in monetary expansion we saw here. We saw a monetary expansion here. That is truly far from that reality. This brought so much capital into the markets and made all markets absolutely explode. And this monetary policy, which we would pursue during a recession, is ultimately what really benefits the altcoins. That means if we somehow see a recession in the next few weeks, we might see one last sell-off, but after that, it will just go straight up. Of course, that's a bit exaggerated now, but you know what I mean. If we see the recession, we will receive so much new capital for the markets within a few weeks to prevent the economy from crashing. And that will ultimately give us a complete boost. So no matter what the initial situation is, if you really look at it a bit longer, rationally speaking, it's not all that bad. Of course, I also don't feel like it if it goes down further. I don't need to pretend otherwise to you. But in the event of a recession, it would really be the last chance to buy. Because in the long term, we would then see huge prices. Look at it. How small this recession was in the overall picture during this bull run. The recession is just such a tiny thing, because afterwards we had the huge bull run in 2021, and I think that's it for now. Thank you for watching, friends. Check out our trading group, where signals come almost daily, and the trades are going very well. Plus, we also have special events from BingX every time, because our trading group is associated with BingX. So check it out, everything is in the description. Sign up through my link. Then send your BingX XYD to this Telegram bot after you have already deposited money. And then you will be able to join the trading group, which is otherwise completely free. You have exclusive events where you can really win big money. For example, we have a prize pool here of over $300,000. You shouldn't miss out on something like this. If you just trade a little here, you can already get a bit of money from it. Take advantage of the opportunity, join the VIP trading group for these events. And then I would say, see you next time, friends.